From bans to battles, there's a lot to navigate when it comes to the United States patchwork of abortion legislation. In fact, it's such a complex topic that we're going to break this one into two parts. First, we'll provide an overview of abortion around the world and a little on our own views for what that's worth. Then in part two, we'll delve into some interesting state legislation. Welcome to Beyond the Bill Number, where we dive deeper into the stories, policies, and legal battles shaping the country. I'm Stephen, and here with me today is Sarah, as always. Sarah, are you ready to dive into some complex terrain?
Absolutely, Stephen. It continues to be a whirlwind when we are talking about reproductive rights here in the US. There's a lot for us to unpack today.
There is a lot to unpack today, but just before we get into that, we should let people know that we're recording this on the morning of the 5th of November, so Election Day. So we have no idea who's won the election, who's predicted to win, or even how it's going, because it's too early. Now, when you listen to this, you'll probably already know. You may know, you may not know, depends how close it is, but you'll certainly know a lot more than us. We're just sat here biting our fingernails. But obviously what we're talking about today, reproductive rights, has been a huge issue in this election campaign, and I'm sure we'll touch on it as we go through. So just bear in mind, we don't know who won. So abortion rights then, abortion laws, they've been a big issue for centuries, really. This isn't a new topic. Most countries have made abortion illegal for centuries, really. But it's also a fact that abortion has always happened. Women have always sought ways to end unwanted pregnancies, often a terrible risk to themselves, a terrible pain, obviously quite gruesome sort of procedures and so on. So the current raft of laws that actually made it legal for women to have these procedures in a proper medical way were really there to prevent that harm. Sort of an acknowledgement that it's going to happen anyway. So why not actually do it in a proper hospital setting where you can do it in a way that isn't going to threaten the life of the mother. So why don't you tell us a little bit, Sarah, about the history of these sorts of laws around the world?
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic, and I think that the US is a really pervasive presence in the space. And I think that's mostly because a lot of people view the US as one of the first countries to formally legalize it with Roe v. Wade, which was in 1973. But little known fact is the Soviet Union was actually the first country to kind of pass a formally legalized abortion situation in 1920. Which is a really long time before Roe v. Wade, and I think the UK was second in 1967. So since then, it's been, obviously a very contested issue all around the world. And a lot of it does have to do with really intensely held personal beliefs for people who are religious or other reasons why they might be pro or anti-abortion. But what we've seen a lot in the last kind of 5 years is a lot of more conservative nations actually making steps forward to do what you said. People are going to be doing this anyways. Let's stop having people die because it's going to happen no matter what. It's just if you are having the ability to have access to legal, safe, and, controlled spaces. And so we've seen, countries like Colombia, Argentina, Thailand, Mexico, places that are really considered to be pretty conservative on this front, making these steps forward to, again, make these decisions to really protect the lives of people that are having these. And, surprise, surprise, people have abortions all over the world. So it's definitely an issue.
They do. So in the UK then, as you say, 1967, the Abortion Act of 1967 was the law that really changed it. It was after some quite big high-profile cases in the 50s, actually, where women had been prosecuted and so on. And at that point, it sort of modified the law to say that, okay, while we're going to leave it as illegal, we're going to make a loophole that if you get two doctors to agree and it's within 24 weeks and it's carried out in an approved setting, then, okay, you can go ahead with it. And that's sort of the law that we've had ever since, really. The politicians never really got around to updating it to a more sort of modern law, but actually it works. There was an interesting case last year which really brought this into the political arena for the first time in decades, really, which is a woman was prosecuted for conducting an unauthorized abortion because she took an abortion pill beyond the 24-week limit, and it was quite a tragic case, really, because she ended up getting sent to prison, and a lot of people were really up in arms because they were saying this isn't really, that's not really a criminal issue. There were all sorts of obviously reasons why she did what she did, and she already had a load of kids. So sending her to prison was not helpful to anybody. It didn't help anybody. Didn't help the
Mm-hmm.
law. It's not like you need a deterrent because it's not like there are loads of people doing this. So so there was a big drive to actually change the law so to decriminalize, effectively decriminalize abortion under all circumstances. So that hasn't happened yet. But it just shows how even in countries like the UK, where it's really not a political issue at all, it never makes an appearance in any of our sort of elections or anything like that. It can still really arouse passions and get people worked up.
So people have to get opinions from two doctors? That's pretty
Yeah,
interesting. Huh.
yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at these abortion laws that are getting passed in the UK or all over the place, especially in the US. We'll talk about the patchwork today, but it's super interesting to see the different ways states and other places are looking to kind of make it a little bit harder. And like the two doctor thing is that's an
Hmm.
interesting little hiccup there.
There's a lot of lies spoken about this on probably on both sides, but certainly on people who oppose any kind of abortion laws will say a lot of things that just simply aren't true about
Hmm.
oh they want abortion just to have free abortions. Anyone can just have an abortion whenever they like and so on. And it's never like that. There's no country in the law that allows
Hmm.
it like that. There are always strict restrictions on abortion, basically because it's one of those things that you simply can't go back. You know, if you make a heated decision and then change your mind later, it's a bit too late, isn't it? And you
Hmm.
end up regretting it for the rest of your life. So it's quite right that there should be quite strict restrictions on it. There should be a process that you have to follow. You should have to consult maybe at least a short period to say, "Are you absolutely sure? You know, let's not do it right now. Maybe come back next week when you're absolutely certain." All of those kind of things, just to make sure that that decision is being made properly and in a cool mind and so on. But of course, then it should be possible, and there shouldn't be sort of too onerous restrictions put in place, which means that people at the end of the day can't get the abortions they need.
Yeah, it's an interesting kind of talk track there because I think that there's a lot of things that are kind of built into the process anyways to try
Yeah,
to make people
absolutely.
have a little bit more time. But one of the things I think is interesting even about like kind of that piece is a lot of times, like especially in the states in the South that do have some kind of legality, but it's, restricted to weeks or something like that.
Yeah,
Actually making people go back, sometimes there's only one or two abortion clinics in the entire state. And so these waiting limits and things like
mm,
that are actually
yeah,
really inhibitive of people actually being able to
yeah,
do it. And so it's really
absolutely.
interesting here how a lot of things like will be legalized, but there'll be other things that make it more difficult and
Yes.
that kind of effectively make it impossible for somebody where, if you live 7 hours from the only abortion clinic and you have to
Mm,
go in and then you can't come back for two
it's
more
true.
weeks and those kinds of things. So yeah, one of the most interesting things, part of the political discourse for the US this time is there's been a lot of talk about post-birth abortions. And it just kind of shows like
So ridiculous.
how heated and yeah, just like single track mind and people have really, really intense opinions, thoughts, feelings
Yeah,
about how this
yeah,
goes. It
yeah.
really is one of those things in the US where there's not a lot of in between room.
People have very strong religious views, and
Hmm.
one of the rights that Americans have, of course, is freedom of religion. They have a right to hold those views, and
Hmm.
they have a right to advocate for those views in the public space as well. And you
Hmm.
can't just dismiss that. I mean, we don't share
No.
those views. I'm
Yeah.
not a religious person. I don't think you are either. But we acknowledge that a lot of people are. And that deserves to be respected. And so that's what makes this such a difficult issue. As with most
Hmm.
things, when religion gets involved, it's very difficult to have rational conversations because it does
Yeah.
just come down to, well, God says so. And so
Yeah.
where do you go from there? And, and
Yeah.
and it makes it harder.
Well, and I think it's also something where a lot of people come from like your moral compass shouldn't impact my quality of
Hmm.
life or my safety.
Yeah.
And it's just so hard because you're kind of,
Hmm.
again, you're just dealing with two complete, like it's apples and
Hmm.
spoons, it's so different.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see that even more pervasive here with the overturn of Roe v. Wade and just all of the different
Hmm.
laws and how all of the different states are working to address what has
Yep.
come on a lot of states' books after the overturn of Roe v. Wade because of all these trigger laws
Yep.
that states had in place. So, we'll talk about this a little later, but a law from the Civil War went on the books in Arizona because
Yes.
that was just what happened due
Absolutely.
to some decisions.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting time
Yeah,
here.
I mean, there is a positive effect from this actually, despite all the obviously all the suffering that's come from it. But from a political point of view, the positive thing is that now finally are people grappling with the actual laws themselves, rather than arguing
Mm-hmm.
about whether the Supreme Court was right or wrong, which is a bit of
Mm-hmm.
a sterile argument, really. Particularly when the
Yeah.
Supreme Court said, "Well, we're not reviewing it," which of course they did.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's people grappling with actual laws that are going to take effect and affect their lives, and it's getting
Mm-hmm.
passionate. It's influencing elections. I mean, you can say that the only reason why Kamala Harris has a chance of winning the election today, so we don't know whether she has one, but whether she's a chance of winning is because of this issue, which has
Mm-hmm.
galvanized women all across the country to come out and vote and take action. And that's actually a positive thing. And over time, we may get to a resolution finally, rather than just having decades of sterile arguments about a particular Supreme Court ruling. We might actually
Mm-hmm.
get to a position where the country can decide what it wants to do and
Yes.
pass some proper laws and then move on and actually have
Mm-hmm.
arguments about other things rather than this.
Yes.
So, anyway,
Yes.
on that point, on that point, let's have a look at these laws, particularly this patchwork of laws that we're seeing across the country, and sort of discuss what the implications and the effects of this are. So, since Supreme Court's ruling, of course, the Supreme Court ruling in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, which was, of course, the ruling that overturned Roe v. Wade, the abortion landscape in the US has been completely transformed in a very short period of time. So, for the first time in nearly 50 years, states have full authority over their abortion laws. And boy, have some of them certainly taken advantage of it.
Yeah, they sure have. And we're seeing everything from near total abortion bans to laws that actually safeguard abortion access. This split among states has created what many are calling a patchwork of abortion laws. Where you live now largely determines your access to reproductive health care. So, on part 2 of this week's episode, we'll dive into that abortion access around the US and some new laws that are legislating new pieces of this issue and a little bit more. So we'll see you over there. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This has been Beyond the Build Number.